Hello, miladies of inestimable value. The easiest way to destroy a Sigma female is to make her doubt the one thing she never questions, herself. Most people don't realize this, but according to behavioral psychology research, the more self-reliant a woman becomes, the more violently she reacts when something tries to fracture her inner stability. And Sigma females? Their entire world is built on that inner stability. Crack it, even slightly, and everything inside her shifts like a fault line ready to erupt. This isn't about heartbreak. This isn't about betrayal. This is about soul damage, the rare kind that only reaches a woman who has spent years building a fortress inside her mind. Sigma females aren't strong. They're engineered differently. They can survive storms other people drown in, but the irony is, it's the quiet, subtle psychological earthquakes that hit them the hardest. And here's the suspense-filled truth. You don't crush a Sigma female with loud chaos. You crush her with precision, the kind of pressure she never sees coming because she's too busy analyzing everything else. But don't worry. This isn't a guide for villains. This is a warning, because if you ever try to break a Sigma female, you'll quickly realize she comes with unadvertised consequences, the type that make you rethink your entire life while she walks away sipping tea, wondering how humans still function. So let's break down exactly what truly crushes a Sigma female's soul. Not the cliches, not the fantasies, but the real psychological triggers no one talks about. Number 1. Interrupting her long-term plans. With sudden instability, Sigma females operate like long-range thinkers. They don't just look at what's happening today, they're constantly calculating months, sometimes years ahead. Their mind is always building, designing, adjusting, and preparing. It's one of the reasons they rarely panic. They already saw the possible outcomes before anyone else even sensed a problem. But that's exactly why sudden instability hits them harder than most people expect. It's not the chaos itself that crushes them, it's the feeling that their internal map has been snatched out of their hands. When a Sigma female commits to a direction, it's not impulsive, it's intentional. She has weighed the risks, considered the alternatives, and mentally rehearsed the path. So when something or someone comes in and disrupts those plans without warning, it feels like someone just pulled the floor from under her mind, not her feet. She doesn't crumble immediately. She freezes first, recalculates, and then begins to lose pieces of herself in the process. It hits deeper because she ties purpose to stability. Not stability from others, but stability she builds herself. It's her quiet sense of control that keeps her calm and grounded. Once that control is shaken, she starts doubting her decisions, her strategies, even her intuition. That doubt grows quietly but dangerously. And the worst part? She doesn't tell anyone. She internalizes everything until she feels like she's living in a world that keeps shifting while she's trying to stand still. Sudden instability also drains her independence. She starts feeling like she's always cleaning up messes she never created. That leads to burnout, resentment, and emotional numbness. It makes her retreat, not because she's afraid, but because her mind can't function in a space where the rules keep changing without her consent. And that's how it crushes her soul. Not through destruction, but through disruption. When her sense of direction collapses, she feels betrayed by her own life. It's a quiet kind of pain, the type that makes even the strongest Sigma female feel lost in a world she once thought she had already mapped out. Number 2. Give her partial truths. Instead of lies, Sigma females are wired to detect lies with an almost uncanny accuracy. They have this mental radar that senses when something doesn't add up, and they rarely miss a beat. Straight-up lies. They see through them instantly and adjust their trust accordingly. That's why trying to deceive a Sigma female with obvious falsehoods rarely works. But partial truths? That's where the real damage happens, and it's subtle, dangerous, and insidious. When you feed her partial truths, she doesn't immediately realize she's being manipulated. Instead, she takes the information at face value and begins analyzing it through her own meticulous mental framework. Every half-truth becomes a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit, and her mind starts spinning, trying to reconcile what's real with what's missing. Unlike a blatant lie, which she can reject and move on from, partial truths keep her engaged, doubting and overthinking. She begins to question her own perception, wondering if she misread the situation or if she's overreacting. The psychological impact builds quietly but powerfully. A Sigma female's strength lies in her clarity of thought and her confidence in her judgment. When partial truths are strategically deployed, they chip away at that clarity. She begins second-guessing her decisions, her instincts, and sometimes even her entire perspective on a person or situation. It's mentally exhausting because she can't simply discard the information. Part of it is true, and her analytical mind refuses to ignore it. What makes this tactic devastating is that it's slow. It doesn't break her in an instant. It doesn't create a dramatic collapse. Instead, it erodes her confidence in subtle, almost invisible increments. She becomes trapped in a mental loop, dissecting, recalculating, and questioning endlessly. The very thing that makes her formidable, her mind, her intuition, her ability to read reality, turns against her. Partial truths make her question the foundation of her own intelligence and judgment. And for someone who prides herself on mental sovereignty, that is the ultimate form of psychological torment. In the end, it's not the lies themselves that crush her, but the space they create inside her mind where certainty once lived. Partial truths are like tiny cracks in concrete, invisible at first, but over time they weaken the entire structure until even the strongest Sigma female feels fragile. Number 3. Weaponize predictability. Sigma females are not afraid of chaos. In fact, chaos excites them in controlled doses because it challenges their intellect and adaptability. What they truly fear is predictability that traps them slowly and invisibly. When everything around them starts following a set pattern, when people, situations, and even emotions behave exactly as expected, it creates a pressure that feels inescapable. It's not loud or dramatic, but it's crushing because it forces a Sigma female into a box she never agreed to enter. Her mind thrives on novelty and depth. She dissects the world, anticipates outcomes, and builds strategies based on patterns. But those patterns are tools, not prisons. When someone takes advantage of her natural tendency to read situations and turns it against her by creating relentless predictability, it strips her of control. She begins to feel watched, measured, and understood in a way that's uncomfortable rather than empowering. The very skill that gives her power, her ability to anticipate and adapt, becomes a cage. Predictability erodes her confidence quietly. It isn't about shocking her or forcing her into panic. It's about suffocating her subtly. When she realizes that no matter how clever she is, the world keeps repeating the same scripts, she starts doubting her own intuition. She wonders if she's truly in control, or if she's just a character in someone else's carefully designed story. That doubt is like a slow leak, draining her energy, curiosity, and emotional resilience. It also isolates her. Sigma females rely on mental stimulation and authenticity. If predictability becomes the norm, she begins to disengage from people and environments that feel mechanical or rehearsed. She starts retreating into her own mind, but even there, the pressure persists, because her brain is wired to notice patterns. The very comfort she once found in her intellect transforms into a source of tension. Weaponizing predictability doesn't create immediate destruction. It's subtle, strategic, and cruel. It attacks the Sigma female's most trusted asset, her mind, making her question her freedom, her choices, and even the vibrancy of life itself. Over time, it's a slow erosion of her soul, a quiet way to make a woman built to resist chaos feel trapped by the monotony of precision. Number 4. Admire her mind while silencing her opinions. A Sigma female's mind is her kingdom. She thrives on intellectual exploration, on expressing thoughts that challenge, provoke, and illuminate. Her opinions are not just words, they are extensions of her identity, carefully considered and fiercely independent. When someone admires her intelligence but simultaneously silences her voice, it creates a jarring contradiction that gnaws at her from the inside. She begins to feel like a brilliant instrument whose music is never truly heard, and that is far more damaging than outright dismissal. The danger of this tactic is subtle. Praising her mind gives her a sense of validation, which she naturally craves in healthy doses. But when that validation is paired with ignoring, interrupting, or trivializing her contributions, it transforms admiration into a weapon. She starts questioning her own relevance. If her thoughts are so impressive, why aren't they respected or allowed to influence anything? This gap between recognition and real impact is like a psychological lever, slowly prying at her confidence and forcing her to reevaluate her role in every interaction. Over time, this dynamic fosters self-doubt. A Sigma female who is silenced begins to wonder whether her opinions are actually valuable or if she's just convincing herself of her own worth. Her intellectual energy, once directed outward with confidence, starts to circle inward, creating a whirlpool of overthinking. She may retreat into herself, presenting an exterior of calm detachment, while internally she struggles with a subtle erosion of agency and self-assurance. The cruelty of admiring her mind while silencing her voice is that it attacks her core without a visible scar. Unlike direct conflict or confrontation, this method works quietly, making her question not the world, but herself. She begins to hesitate before speaking, second-guess every thought, and measure the value of her insights against an invisible standard that no one truly enforces. The very strength that defines her, her intellect and independent thinking, turns into a source of internal conflict, leaving her trapped between pride in her mind and frustration at being unheard. This method doesn't break her with force, it erodes her from within. Silencing a Sigma female while praising her intelligence is a subtle, precise strike to her soul, undermining the one thing she treasures most, her voice. Number 5. Force her to forgive fast, before she processes. Sigma females are deliberate with their emotions. When someone hurts them or betrays their trust, they don't react impulsively. They analyze, process, and understand every layer of the situation before deciding how to move forward. This isn't stubbornness or pride, it's their survival mechanism. Their patience ensures they never act out of weakness, and it protects their sense of self. Forcing a Sigma female to forgive quickly before she has processed what happened bypasses this inner system entirely, and the result is a subtle, soul-deep disruption. When she's pushed to reconcile or move on prematurely, she experiences a conflict that eats at her quietly but intensely. Part of her wants to comply to maintain peace or keep relationships intact, but another part screams that she's betraying her own standards. This tension fractures her inner stability because she's being coerced into performing emotional acts before she's ready. Every half-hearted smile or forced apology chips away at her self-respect and her trust in her own judgment. She begins to feel alien inside her own skin, as if she's living someone else's emotional timeline instead of her own. The damage is compounded because Sigma females are strategic thinkers. They anticipate consequences, calculate outcomes, and value lessons from every emotional encounter. If forgiveness is rushed, the lesson is skipped, the strategy is broken, and she feels mentally unmoored. Over time, this builds resentment, not just toward the person pushing her, but toward herself for being forced into something unnatural. Her mind, normally a source of clarity and strength, becomes a battlefield of frustration and suppressed anger. This tactic doesn't create a dramatic explosion. It doesn't force her to collapse in front of others. Instead, it quietly erodes her equilibrium. She starts doubting whether she can trust her own instincts, whether her boundaries hold any weight, and whether her emotional intelligence is reliable. For a Sigma female, the ability to process and respond on her own terms is sacred. When that is stolen, even temporarily, it leaves a lingering sense of violation, a slow but undeniable erosion of the soul's resilience. Forcing her to forgive too quickly doesn't just hurt. It destabilizes the very architecture of her inner world, making her question herself long after the moment has passed. Number 6. Make her believe her strength is scary to everyone. Sigma females are powerful in quiet, unassuming ways. Their strength isn't just physical or social, it's mental, emotional, and strategic. They move through the world with confidence that comes from knowing who they are and what they can handle. Most people admire it, and some fear it. But a Sigma female rarely worries about what others think. That is, until someone convinces her that her power is threatening to everyone around her. Once that seed is planted, it can silently corrode her sense of self. When she starts believing that her very presence intimidates others, she internalizes a paradox. Her strength, once a source of pride and security, becomes a burden. She begins questioning whether her independence is acceptable, whether her intellect is too sharp, or whether her decisiveness is somehow dangerous. The world that once felt navigable and full of opportunity starts to feel like a minefield. Every interaction becomes a calculation. How much can she show without frightening people? How much can she achieve without creating resentment? How much of herself can exist without being perceived as a threat? This belief isolates her. Sigma females already value autonomy, but when strength is seen as something scary, it turns her independence into a wall that separates rather than protects. She starts to withdraw, not because she wants to, but because she fears the consequences of being fully herself. Her natural confidence begins to feel performative, as if she must tone herself down to survive socially. Every decision, every expression, every display of competence carries a weight that wasn't there before, and the psychological toll is immense. The most insidious part is that this self-doubt doesn't come from external attacks. People might still respect her, still admire her brilliance, but the narrative she carries in her mind becomes a prison. Her power, which once drew people to her and fueled her purpose, now isolates and restrains her. For a Sigma female, believing that her strength is dangerous transforms her gift into a silent curse, eroding the confidence and freedom that define her essence. Her soul doesn't shatter in one blow. It bends, hesitates, and doubts itself in ways that are far more profound and lasting. Number 7. Make her explain the logic behind her instincts. Sigma females rely heavily on their instincts. Their intuition isn't a casual gut feeling. It's a finely tuned internal compass built from observation, experience, and analysis. They trust it more than most people trust advice from others, and it guides nearly every decision they make. Asking a Sigma female to explain the logic behind her instincts is not just a question. It's an attack on the very foundation of how she operates. Her instincts operate below the level of conscious reasoning. They allow her to act quickly, to avoid mistakes, and to navigate situations that would paralyze most people. When she is forced to articulate why she feels a certain way, it forces her mind to move in a direction it isn't naturally designed for. Suddenly, A clear and confident reaction becomes a tangled web of justifications, rationalizations, and self-doubt. She begins to question whether her instincts are valid, whether she misread signals, or whether she is overcomplicating things. The damage is subtle but profound. It doesn't crush her outwardly or provoke dramatic responses, but it chips away at her internal trust. Her instincts have been her shield and her guide, the quiet engine behind her decisiveness and independence. When that engine is questioned repeatedly, she starts to hesitate, overthink, and second-guess herself in ways that are mentally exhausting. Actions that once flowed naturally now feel laborious, and the confidence that comes from trusting herself begins to erode. This is especially dangerous because Sigma females are deeply private about their thought processes. When asked to explain every instinct, they are forced into a space where vulnerability meets scrutiny. They may comply externally, offering explanations and reasoning, but internally, the experience creates tension and a sense of violation. She starts to feel like her own mind is no longer a safe space, that the very mechanisms that make her formidable can be interrogated and undermined. Making her explain the logic behind her instincts is a surgical psychological strike. It doesn't destroy her immediately, but it creates cracks in the foundation of her confidence and independence. Over time, the self-doubt grows quietly, reshaping how she perceives herself and how she moves through the world. Her instincts, once her greatest weapon, become a source of internal conflict. Number 8. Praise her strength. Then question why she has it. Sigma females are built to be strong. Their strength isn't just physical or social, it's a product of experience, intelligence, and survival. They've learned to rely on themselves to protect their minds and hearts, and to navigate a world that often misunderstands or underestimates them. It's part of their identity, part of what makes them formidable. Praising that strength might seem harmless, even flattering, but pairing it immediately with a question about why she had to become that way creates a sharp, invisible wedge between her confidence and her self-perception. When you highlight her resilience and then ask why she needed it, you force her to confront the past she usually keeps private. Strength, which she has always worn like armor, suddenly becomes a reflection of pain, struggle, or deficiency. She begins to see her achievements and independence not as personal victories, but as evidence that life was cruel enough to demand them. That subtle shift turns pride into discomfort and confidence into hesitation. The very trait that makes her remarkable, her ability to endure, adapt, and excel, starts to feel like a burden rather than a badge of honor. This tactic works because it attacks her identity indirectly. Sigma females rarely let anyone manipulate them outright, but when you make them analyze their own strength through the lens of necessity or trauma, you force them to reevaluate themselves in a way that feels natural, not imposed. Her mind starts replaying scenarios, questioning motives, and dissecting whether her independence came at the cost of something essential. She feels exposed, not by external threat, but by the suggestion that her power is linked to vulnerability, weakness, or past hardship. The brilliance of this subtle undermining is that it doesn't provoke immediate resistance. She remains composed, articulate, and strong on the surface, but internally the seeds of self-doubt begin to grow. Praising her strength while questioning why she has it is a psychological trap that shifts her perspective from empowerment to introspection, making her wonder if her very resilience is evidence of a life she didn't choose. Over time, that thought lingers, quietly chipping away at the unwavering confidence that defines a Sigma female. Number 9. Push her into social situations where she doesn't control the narrative. Sigma females thrive on autonomy. They observe, analyze and maneuver through social situations with a level of control that feels effortless to them. They don't need approval, attention, or validation. What matters is that they move strategically, protecting their energy while understanding the dynamics around them. When someone pushes a Sigma female into a social scenario where she has no control over the narrative, it disrupts her equilibrium in a way few people can imagine. Suddenly, the environment she would normally read and adapt to feels unpredictable, chaotic, and even threatening. This lack of control hits deep, because Sigma females rely on subtle observation to navigate human behavior. They are always aware of power structures, hidden agendas, and emotional undercurrents. When thrown into a situation where others dictate the flow, she is stripped of her natural advantage. Her intuition, usually a sharp tool for maneuvering, becomes unreliable because she can't influence outcomes the way she prefers. This creates tension and frustration that doesn't show on the outside, but eats away at her internally. Being forced into social unpredictability also triggers a kind of cognitive fatigue. Sigma females process the world differently. They think several moves ahead, anticipate reactions, and weigh consequences before acting. Take away their ability to guide the interaction, and every conversation becomes a minefield. She starts questioning her instincts, overanalyzing interactions, and second-guessing every word she says. Even the most composed Sigma female can feel mentally drained and unsettled when she can't operate on her own terms. The psychological effect is profound because it attacks her confidence and her sense of self-sufficiency simultaneously. She begins to wonder if she misread situations or misjudged people, doubts that usually never linger. The experience forces her to confront vulnerability in a way she rarely allows herself, and that discomfort can linger long after the interaction ends. Pushing a Sigma female into social settings where she can't control the narrative doesn't create drama on the surface. It works quietly, eroding her calm, self-assured presence from within, making her retreat, recalibrate, and question her instincts in a world she once navigated with precision and authority. Number 10. Use her honesty. Against her Sigma females value honesty like a rare currency. They are direct, transparent, and unafraid to confront truths, even when it makes others uncomfortable. Their words are deliberate, chosen carefully to express clarity and integrity. But this very trait, which sets them apart, can be turned against them in ways that are subtle, cruel, and psychologically destabilizing. When someone takes her honesty and twists it into a weapon, it creates a tension that eats away at her confidence and sense of security. When a Sigma female shares a truth about her feelings, her opinions, or her experiences, it is meant to communicate understanding and trust. Using that information against her flips the dynamic entirely. Suddenly, the openness that is her strength becomes a liability. She begins to question the act of speaking itself. Every word she utters, every thought she expresses, now carries the potential for misinterpretation, judgment, or manipulation. This creates a mental strain that she cannot easily shake, because the foundation of her social interactions, honesty, is now unsafe. The psychological impact goes deeper than simple mistrust. Sigma females pride themselves on reading people accurately and responding strategically. When her honesty is weaponized, it forces her into self-censorship. She begins analyzing every phrase before speaking, weighing the potential consequences of transparency. Over time, this erodes her natural confidence and slows the decisiveness that defines her. Even small decisions become mentally taxing because the environment feels unpredictable and her own words feel like potential traps. What makes this tactic especially cruel is its quiet nature. There are no overt confrontations or dramatic betrayals. The damage is internal and cumulative, She may appear composed, rational, and unaffected on the outside, but internally, her trust, her clarity, and her self-assurance are quietly compromised. Using a Sigma female's honesty against her is a precision strike to the mind and soul. It attacks the very thing she relies on to navigate life, her truthfulness, and turns it into a source of doubt, fear, and caution. Over time, it creates an invisible barrier around her, where openness once thrived, leaving her mentally defensive and emotionally isolated without anyone noticing. Number 11. Force her into leadership roles. She never asked for Sigma. Females are not afraid of responsibility, but they are highly selective about where and when they invest their energy. Leadership is not about titles for them. It's about influence, strategy, and control over situations they care about. Forcing a Sigma female into a leadership role she never sought strips her of choice, turning what could be empowerment into a subtle form of pressure and psychological strain. Suddenly her skills are expected to serve agendas she didn't choose, and the freedom she values above all else begins to feel like a cage. When pushed into unwanted leadership, a Sigma female experiences a tension between capability and autonomy. She knows she can handle the role, she always can, but handling it isn't the same as wanting it. The very competence that makes her impressive now becomes a burden. Each decision she makes, each responsibility she carries, is no longer a product of her own design. It is imposed. That subtle shift transforms confidence into stress, strategy into obligation, and pride into quiet resentment. The strain intensifies because Sigma females are analytical by nature. They anticipate outcomes, weigh risks, and assess dynamics before acting. When leadership is forced upon her, she has to expend enormous mental energy navigating expectations that conflict with her instincts and priorities. She may still perform flawlessly, but internally she is calculating constantly, reconciling her own standards with external demands. That constant internal negotiation is exhausting, draining the mental clarity and emotional balance she normally wields effortlessly. The most damaging part is that this pressure is invisible to others. People see her competence and assume she thrives, unaware of the internal toll it takes. She may smile, make decisions, and command respect externally, while internally feeling the slow erosion of freedom, self-direction, and even personal satisfaction. Over time, she may begin questioning why her independence, which is central to her identity, has been compromised even when she outwardly appears unshaken. Forcing a Sigma female into leadership she never asked for doesn't just challenge her skills, it challenges her autonomy, her sense of control, and the very structure of her inner world. It is a subtle, relentless test that can make even the most resilient woman feel trapped in a role she never wanted, undermining the freedom and self-determination she treasures above all else. Number 12. Praise her rarity, while treating her like she's replaceable. Sigma females are rare by nature. Their independence, intelligence, and self-sufficiency set them apart from the majority, and they know it. They move through the world selectively, valuing quality over quantity in relationships, opportunities, and connections, recognizing and praising that rarity can feel affirming, even empowering. But pairing admiration with treatment that suggests she's replaceable creates a psychological contradiction so jarring it quietly undermines her core. It is a subtle form of dissonance that attacks both her confidence and her sense of value. When someone tells a Sigma female she's extraordinary but simultaneously treats her as if anyone could step in and fill her place, it forces her mind into a complex loop of doubt. She begins questioning whether her uniqueness matters or if it's inconsequential in a world that claims to recognize it. That tension makes her overanalyze interactions, second-guess her worth, and scrutinize how others perceive her every action. Her mind, normally a fortress of clarity, starts running endless simulations, trying to reconcile praise with neglect, admiration with disposability. The emotional toll is significant because Sigma females operate on principles of authenticity and self-determination. They are acutely aware of social dynamics and are usually excellent at reading intentions. When her rarity is acknowledged superficially but not treated with respect in practice, it triggers a deep internal conflict. She wonders if she misjudged the situation, if people genuinely value her, or if she's been quietly undervalued all along. That uncertainty creates tension, erodes trust, and fosters subtle emotional withdrawal. Over time, this contradiction chips away at her resilience. She may continue to operate effectively, maintaining her composure and independence outwardly, but internally, she feels undervalued and unseen. The praise becomes hollow, the recognition meaningless, and the rare qualities she treasures most feel almost like liabilities. Treating a Sigma female as replaceable while acknowledging her uniqueness is a precise psychological tactic. It doesn't shatter her immediately, but it quietly destabilizes her sense of identity, leaving her questioning her impact, her significance, and even her power, the very traits that make her extraordinary. Conclusion. Sigma females are not like anyone else you've ever encountered. Their strength, independence, and intelligence make them rare, formidable, and often untouchable. But what makes them truly exceptional is not just their resilience. It's the precision with which they navigate life, protect themselves, and move through the world on their own terms. Trying to break a Sigma female is not a matter of loud confrontations or dramatic games. It's about subtle, surgical strategies that quietly erode confidence, distort perception, and exploit the very traits that make her extraordinary. Each tactic, from undermining her instincts to forcing her into uncomfortable social roles, is designed to shake her internal foundation without leaving obvious marks. That is the power of psychological disruption against someone built to resist it. Yet the irony is undeniable. Sigma females can withstand storms that would crush most people, but they are human. Subtle, calculated pressures have the potential to reach deep into their minds and souls. Understanding these vulnerabilities is not about creating harm. It's about awareness, respect, and insight into one of the most enigmatic personalities in existence. To truly appreciate a Sigma female is to recognize both her brilliance and the delicate balance that sustains it. She is a force of nature, rare, self-reliant, and uncompromising. And that is why attempting to break her is not just difficult, it's almost impossible without consequences. So, if this breakdown of Sigma female dynamics has given you insight, perspective, or even a deeper understanding of human behavior, make sure you stay connected. Hit that subscribe button to join our community, comment your thoughts below to share your experiences, and share this video with others who need to understand the rare power of Sigma females. Your engagement helps uncover more truths, more secrets, and more of the psychological strategies that shape extraordinary minds. Remember, Sigma females are not just rare, they are legendary, and the more we understand them, the better we navigate a world full of complex, untamed brilliance.